intro, Vicky.
That was great. Thanks, John.
Yeah, so look, maybe let's kind of start the story from the start, I suppose. If you want to take it all the way back and maybe tell us where you grew up and tell us a little bit about your childhood first.
Yeah, sure. I grew up in Cobh, County Cork. For anybody who doesn't know, it's a town in the southern part of Ireland. Um, and I was born in 1970, so I had my teenage years in the 80s, the deep dark days of Irish depression, etc. in more ways than one,
Yeah.
So it was really a very, it's a lovely town, but I really didn't like it when I was growing up. I've softened towards it now, I suppose, as you do when you get older, maybe. But my parents were lovely people, still are, just the best people. They really are, my dad was in the Navy, as John mentioned, and my mum was a cleaner, and they just worked all the hours to give us the best that they could. Just anything they had, we got it. None of them they're not drinkers, they're not addicts of any sort. So I don't know where they got me, but
So you'd say quite a happy childhood, Vicky, in
yeah.
Cobh, a beautiful part of the world.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did, definitely. But I always, I suppose I just always wanted more, Una. If I wanted the second piece of cake, I wanted, the second bowl of Angel Delight. I didn't see why, we had to share. I wanted piano lessons. I wanted, all the things that my parents couldn't afford, but would have given me if they could. But sometimes I think it doesn't matter. If I had gotten all of those things, I still would have wanted more,
Yeah, was there maybe just a happiness issue in yourself then that it wouldn't have maybe done enough either?
Exactly. There was probably I was maybe born with a void. I don't know.
Aren't we all? So I suppose moving on from there then, how did you get on as you went on through school, and when did you kind of start to see the problems, I suppose, emerge? Or, you probably initially didn't realize there was an issue, but I suppose where did you start to kind of maybe move towards addiction? What age would you have been then?
I think when I was when I was 7, my uncle Finbar, he worked in the local dockyard, which was the Verone Cork dockyard, a huge employer in Cobh and surrounding areas, and he was killed in an explosion there. And I suppose, you don't put the pieces of things together, I suppose, until you're an adult. But one counsellor told me that she thinks that's probably what started the OCD anyway, at least. That's obsessive compulsive disorder, which we'll probably talk about later. But I think things started to, I was just a huge worrier, definitely. And I loved school, in that I was always really, really bright. I won, like competitions and essay contests, and I was, paraded around the classrooms routinely because I got, the top marks and things and stuff like that. But then I realized that drew negative attention as well. There was a bit of bullying, and so I tended to keep the head down after that, maybe. And so I suppose in my teens, probably age 17, that's when I took my first drink. That enabled me to, I had withdrawn into some sort of inner world, maybe. And that drink just lit me up like a pinball machine. I was able to be super Vickie.
You felt like you found your place, and
my calling.
Yeah, you found a new confidence, I'd imagine.
Exactly. Yeah. So looking back, that's probably how it came to be.
Yeah, and tell me, you mentioned your uncle there and his untimely death. Were you very close to him, or was it just such a shock at that young age? That was a real, probably unrecognized trauma that you didn't discover until probably years and years later when you dug back into it.
Yeah, absolutely. You hit the nail on the head, because it was where I would have first seen the adults around me crying, and not just crying, but distraught, you know, distraught. My nan was, you know, as you can imagine, losing her son. He was 27, and he was just married a year. And, you know, it was a real, I remember myself and my sister Mandy hiding under the table because we couldn't handle this kind of, the depth of the enormity of it, I suppose, you know. And yeah, I think it triggered something in me, probably, you know, looking back now. This idea that if I didn't do all of the things that my head told me to do, I would be responsible for the death of everybody in my family. You know,
Hey.
probably, you know, progressed into OCD and stuff like that. You know, and
Yeah, to try and take control of things, maybe. Yeah, it's a young age, 7, to try and process grief like that, you know, and to see the people that you rely on at that age, to, you know, to see them upset and them hurt. You don't see that often, you know, and at that young age, that's a tough one to process. So I suppose from there you had that in the background, not really knowing that that was causing you an issue, maybe, and up through your teenage years, a little bit of bullying, and then once the drinking started, can you tell me how that developed, I suppose, and maybe some of the problems that caused you? And
yeah, absolutely. It just, I think, looking back now, I was definitely drinking addictively from the very start. I couldn't stop. It made me feel incredible. I had, as I said, you know, I was confident. I was able to talk to people where I was severely shy as a teenager. I suppose it just made me feel that I could do and say what I wanted to do and say. And then the problems it caused me would have been, I suppose an unreliability, and not being accountable, and a lack of responsibility, and probably stalling my personal growth at the age of 17. I think that's when I stopped sometimes developing until I got sober. I kind of, it halted my development, I think. And, you know, all of the things that go with it, like, you know, unreliability and just unmanageability in my daily life, you know, that sort of thing, you know.
yeah, would there have been a lot of kind of maybe destructive tendencies? And
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, a lot of blackouts. Definitely self-sabotaging. Because I suppose when you're in addiction, and I know we spoke a little bit about this earlier on the phone, you're in a kind of a prison, and you don't even realize that that's where you are until you stop, you know. But you're in boxes within boxes within boxes, and I look back now and I see so many missed opportunities, and just because of the way my thinking would have been twisted because of addiction and because of other things, you know.
yeah, and I suppose addiction, as well as anything, is like a journey, really. You know, once you kind of got into the drinking and you done reliability, and you maybe were letting people around you down and things like that, I suppose, how did it spiral for you? You know, because you have to kind of hit rock bottom before you start to look at recovering. So how did that journey develop for you, I suppose? You know, what got it to a point that you thought, right, enough of this?
Oh, so many things. There could have been, looking back now, I mean, I could have stopped in my 20s. I was drinking. My ex-husband is still in active addiction, as far as I know, but so it was 2 parents who would have been in active addiction. And I just wanted to be a responsible parent, but I couldn't see how to do that. I felt like I know now that I had no life skills because I hadn't spent any time identifying them and developing them. But back then, I just thought I was that I was some kind of lost cause, that, you know, that I wouldn't be able to care properly for my kids, that there was something wrong with me, that I couldn't, you know. I chose. I always made things really difficult for myself as well. I always took the hard road on things, and, you know, went against the bloody grain, and you know,
Yeah.
just pure stubbornness and always wanting to do things differently, I suppose. But yeah, I can see. So it was a lot of things combining. And it wasn't until I was 40 that everything really, you know, I was in a position where my back was to the wall, you know, from years of unmanageability. And I was in a place where I had to do something else, you know. And the incident that drove me to the AA rooms for the second time, because I'd gone in April 2010, seen, you know, God written on the wall and thought, nope, not for me, thank you. And came back in after I crashed my car into a group of teenage girls. And it's only with the grace of whatever power is, you know, in the universe that I didn't harm anybody, I didn't hurt anybody. Because if I had, I'm not sure I could be here today talking to you, do you know?
Yeah, well, thank God for that.
Yeah.
So would you say then that that was your moment, Vickie? Was it
Yeah,
then that you said, okay,
yeah,
enough is enough?
absolutely. Yeah.
And what steps did you take from there then? Once you had that that issue, that item happen to you, where did you go from there?
I was brought, that was that incident happened on the 8th of May 2010. And I was taken the next day by a friend to AA. I was given a phone number. Somebody phoned me back and they drove me to a meeting. And touch wood, I haven't taken a drink since, you know. That was the first step to get into AA. And looking back now, things were still really, really crazy in the first year, because all of a sudden you have no more crutch and no more escape as you know it. And you have all of reality comes crashing in. And it's very difficult to deal with all of the you know, the consequences of my drinking, you know, just crash landed into my life at that time. And I found meetings weren't enough. So the same friend referred me to Arbour House, which is a treatment program. Now, I did go down to Tabor Lodge, and I just decided that even though they said they'd take me, I didn't want to put my kids through the residential thing. I didn't want to go to a residential treatment centre. So that's why I kept going to meetings from May, and then November I hit a wall and I thought, I can't do this on my own. Went to Arbour House, had a consultation there in early December, and my counsellor Pat, who worked there at the time, told me that I'd need 3 months of one-on-one with her before I was ready to join the group. So I did that. And then I completed the whole Arbour House treatment, which, for anybody who doesn't know, at the time was 2 mornings a week of group therapy, and for 12 weeks, and then a further, 44 weeks of aftercare. So for two evenings a week. And that is the first thing I ever completed in my life.
Oh, well done. It was worth completing. I think it was worth completing.
Oh,
And can you tell us a little bit about it, Vickie? So I'm just thinking, you know, for people that we have on the call, or this will be broadcast after, maybe have family members or themselves that could be in active addiction or lean in that direction with dependency or whatever it may be. And I mean, sometimes the thought of that is very, very scary to reach out for help, you know. So can you tell us a little bit about how that process worked, the support that was there for you, what that gave you, I suppose, and how that kind of springboarded you out into the healthy, fabulous life that you have today?
that's a great way to put it. Yeah, springboard. Yeah, it's an absolute springboard. But you're right. Getting from where you are in active addiction to be able to reach out, it's not easy as you know. And I suppose I trusted that friend. That was the first thing. She had a brother in active addiction who had recently joined AA, and I'd seen the difference in his life. And just, I suppose, when I still had, the arrogance for myself, when I was in active addiction, I had a huge ego and very low self-esteem. And the ego led me to all kinds of arrogance, even when I was newly sober. I mean, I phoned Arbor House and they said they couldn't see me for 3 weeks. And I was going, 3 weeks? What do you mean 3 weeks? I'm coming today or I'm not coming at all,
Yeah. Because imagine when you're ready, you're ready. You need to get going straight away, or there's a risk there.
Exactly, that you will not follow. But I guess
Yeah.
that's just part of living life on life's terms, that you do. And I learned the skills for living in there. I learned how to live and how to cope with life on life's terms. So for anybody who have family members, it's something that the person must decide to do for themselves. It's not something that somebody can be forced into. I've seen people in there who were forced into it, and it doesn't work. It might work for a time, but you have to be willing to do it yourself. And you can, it's online now, and everything. Meetings are online, and it's a much. You can still be really anonymous. You can call up, and you don't have to give your name or your details, but make the call, or get somebody to make it for you, because there's a real gap between, maybe there should be sort of, I suppose the GP is a port of call, or a counsellor, or even you could go to the A&E or South Doc and ask them to make the call on your behalf. But it's always worth it to make the call,
Okay, because I mean, I think that first step for people can be really difficult, and especially in Ireland, where and probably a lot of the UK too. We've people on the call from the UK today, but we're a drinking nation. It's kind of seen as the norm here, and we all know Paddy in the pub that's fond of the drink, as we like to say in Ireland. That's putting it mildly, but we kind of make it the norm, don't we? We normalize it. So sometimes I think people don't even recognize there's an issue, or maybe there's a fear and a shame in it as well, that, oh, I don't have that problem. And as you said, maybe building from ego and building from the problems that have caused that in the first place.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. There is, it's like a badge of honor here to be a drinker, and it's totally, I mean, I feel like it's changing, it's shifting slightly. I think that, programs like the Two Norries and all of the different podcasts that have come on, and having that really great work into normalizing addiction rather than normal, as well as normalizing heavy drinking, and bringing addiction out from this, secret closet that nobody opens or wants to open, bringing it out into the open, flushing it out, that's where it belongs. The more we talk about it, and the more people who tell their stories, as we were saying earlier, it maybe inspires others to be more honest, and to, into admitting that something's going wrong, because there's an awful, as you said, there's this huge shame around it, and I don't see why there should be. Like, there's a huge shame and stigma around mental health issues here, and our bodies are connected, from our head to our toes. We don't have any shame about saying, oh, I broke my arm, it's in plaster, I fell. Why would we have a shame around, oh, I'm feeling shit, I need help, and the same with drinking. You really need to, I mean, I feel that there are bigger issues at play, possibly in both of our nations, the UK and Ireland. Historically speaking, I think there's a huge amount of historical trauma that, we're seeing the symptoms of it until we've dealt with the causes of it, like the mother and baby homes here, and religion, and all of this kind of thing. So maybe that's something that needs to be spoken about at a deeper level also. And also, how about starting primary schools with let's learn to talk about our feelings from junior infants up. Let's learn how to express ourselves. Let's learn how to ask for help. Let's learn to say, I'm not feeling good today, I need help, from very early on.
Yeah.
Who needs to learn about historical battles? I'm sorry, like, who in the name of, like, why do we need to teach our children these things.
Yeah, I
Let them
know.
teach how to live.
Life skills and coping skills and
Yeah,
trauma and grief, and yeah, these things come to everybody's door, I think.
yeah, they really do.
And let's maybe go back a little bit, Vickie. So you had mentioned briefly around OCD, and I know we spoke a little bit earlier about panic attacks and
Mhm.
that type of challenges that you had. And can you maybe take us through that, step us through those challenges you had with your own mental health, and how do you think that connected in with the addiction then? I'm sure, I mean, they were of each other, I'm sure. How do you think that all played out? And maybe when did you start to experience those issues first, I suppose?
I suppose when I can go back to it now, Una, I can see, it was a counsellor pointed out to me that maybe it was my uncle's death
Mm.
triggered it. And I can see that now, but when you're locked inside that kind of thinking, it's just your world, you don't question it. Um,
Mm.
like, to give you an example, I would have had to, by the time I was in secondary school, I had to get, so OCD is obsessions and compulsions. Your obsessions fuel the compulsions. So I was obsessed with the safety of my family. So it's called like magical thinking. I thought I was responsible for the safety of my family. So I would have to pray every single night for the safety of my family and mention every single person. So I couldn't sleep at night. I was very worried, and I would be the last person in the house awake, calling out like the Waltons, good night, mom, good night, dad, until nobody answered. And then I'd be locked inside this kind of world of terror of my own making. Um, but I would have to say and line up all my teddies on the bed in a certain manner. And then that progressed to good numbers and bad numbers. So 4 was a good number, 6 was a good number. So I'd have to repeat things like I'd have to get dressed 4 times or 6 times before school, going into bed, all of the things like crossing thresholds of doors, turning off light switches, nighttime routines. There was a checklist for everything. It was a whole other, it was a career before I ever had a career. I had to, I didn't allow myself to hang posters on the walls. They had to be under my bed. I couldn't listen to music until I did my rituals of plugging in and out the stereo, 4 times, and then multiples of 4 times. So when you're trying to do this, you're trying to cancel out the negative thoughts, but there's no cancelling them out. So then there's no feeling safe. You're looking for a feeling safe. And you learn over time there's no safety. So I guess how that drinking played into it is that as soon as I drank, it started to quiet the voice of this. And, so then, but the downside of that then is you want to drink to oblivion because you want to silence everything. So you drink to the stage where you pass out, or at least you hope that, for 10 hours you
Yeah.
keep drinking, and at some stage you will lose consciousness, and
To
that's,
have peace from that, Vickie, really, it sounds like
yeah,
that's absolutely life absorbing, that all those little rituals that you have imposed on yourself, that you have to do those before you can function, that's part of your day.
yeah,
That sounds really difficult. And
was, yeah.
did did the panic attacks come with the OCD or after, or how did that part of your mental health develop itself, or when did that rear its head?
I took ecstasy for the first time when I was 27, and I had my first panic attack after that. So don't know. That was the best thing. I'm not recommending ecstasy, but I'm just saying, obviously not Jesus Christ, but
Mm.
that gave me total freedom. I was with it, present with everybody in the room, but had no back talk in my head. That was, I think, the first time in my life I felt like that. Um, but I had a panic attack 2 days later. That was my first one, and I thought I was having a heart attack and dying. I thought that was it, my last few minutes on earth. So much so that my ex-husband at the time, he called a taxi and brought me straight down to the GP, who, in his wisdom, gave me a Valium injection. And that was the next thing I discovered that made me, I was able to sleep and relax, you know. I
Okay.
realized that I did not know the feeling of relaxation. Looking back on it now, I had no idea what it felt like to be relaxed, you know.
Yeah.
And so that kind of, I suppose, I would have been getting panic attacks then a lot um, from that time onwards, and I didn't know how to handle them. I didn't want to get into. The doctor gave me some Valium at the time, and I flushed it down the toilet because I knew that that was my next big thing if I went with it, you know, because um, yeah, so that's where that kind of stopped, I suppose. But I
Well, that was brave of you to recognize that, you know, given that you were in active alcohol addiction at that point, probably that you actually thought, okay, this is a step too far for me. You could see where that road would have taken you, maybe.
definitely, I was terrified because it was
Mm.
just so good, you know. And I knew, I suppose, that one wouldn't be enough the next time, and then two wouldn't be enough. And I knew from taking other drugs, you know, that the first hit is always the best, and you're never going to be able to replicate that, you know, no matter what. Yeah,
Yeah, and most especially when it's quietening those negative thoughts and those compulsions. And I mean, that's probably the best high you could have hoped for
yeah,
at that time, you know, to
yeah,
to put all of that to bed for you and give you some little bit of normality for a while, maybe.
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And what supports did you find then, Vicky, around your mental health issues? So did you seek out counselors? Where was the turning point there? Did that all come when you started in AA, or had you a different journey with your mental health?
Yeah, I'd gone previously, Una. I remember having postnatal depression, definitely, after all of them. I have 4 kids. Um, and I remember just being in a terrible place. And there was one woman GP in Cobh at the time, and I wanted to go to her. And I went, and the day that I went, because you know the unmanageability, I had no money, and everything was just topsy turvy. I had no medical card because I hadn't filled out the papers. I was just an absolute fucking pity to it, you know? And so I got the money together. I remember distinctly, it was £12 at the time. That was back in the early 90s. And it was my second, I was just after having my second baby, my daughter, and got the money together to go to the female GP. Didn't realize it wasn't her. It was another one standing in for her, a substitute. She was so cold and distant. She wasn't interested. I told her, tried to tell her that I was really struggling, you know, with depression, and she said, "Oh, that's all. That's all a part of it, really." And that was the end of it. And I know now that I should have persevered, but it had taken me so much to get there that day that I felt I couldn't kind of summon up the reserves to get there again, you know. So it wasn't until I was in my 30s I got assessed by a psychiatrist, and she told me I had OCD, and that was when I was 37. But she also told me that I had a drinking problem, and that she thought I had a drinking problem, and that she wouldn't be able to continue to counsel me until I addressed it. So high arrogance, high ego. I was like, how dare you even suggest that I have a drinking problem? And that was the end of that. So, you know, I had to go through a couple of years more drinking and being destructive to really come to terms with that, you know. Didn't want to be told.
Okay. And what got you to the point, Vicky, that you were actually being assessed by a psychiatrist? Was that something you put yourself forward for? Was that AA? How did that happen in your life?
As I put myself forward, there were several periods of my life where I just felt, not that I was suicidal because I had kids, but that I couldn't go on dealing with the things. And like that there had to be something really badly wrong with me, because I wasn't able to cope with anything. My life was going through, you know, cycles of just awful unmanageability and, you know, like poverty and just, you know, my partner was violent and, you know, things like that, and just not being able to tell anybody about it. So I thought I'd go to counselors and see if they could help. And every time, I suppose, you do something like this, it takes an awful lot to get to that place, you know, to say, this is where I am today, please help me.
Yeah.
You know, help me help myself, help me to be a better mother, help me to be a better person. But really it wasn't until so I would go to the GP, and they would, and I was constantly changing GPs as well, you know, and at that point I was living in Carrigaline. I had a different partner, I had my fourth baby, and things were just really bad for me, mentally speaking. So that meant they were also bad for my children and the people around me. And I went and got diagnosed, and that was the start of it, really. I started taking medication at that point as well. But sure, look, then it was, you know, doubled, then it was trebled, because I was still drinking and I hadn't addressed that. So I had to stop drinking to really see, you know, what was going on, you know, rip the blinkers off, and try and see how to fix things, you know.
Okay, and when then did you eventually kind of crack that nut? When did you eventually, I suppose, get sober and stay sober? What kind of got you to that point?
I was 40, and my second long-term relationship was breaking down. Like it was, yeah, it was broken down. There was an awful lot of, you know, things that I was doing at the time that, when I look back now, I put myself in some really badly risky situations. There were just problems that I couldn't deal with. I didn't want to be at home with my kids. I just wanted to be out of there and out of my head all the time. And I had crashed a car 2 years previously to the second crash. I went out through the windscreen. There was nobody else involved, but I only cracked a few ribs, which was very lucky. But that was I suppose the consequences were just getting more and more, you know, the things, it's like, you know, you're trying to, there's a leak in a pipe and you're trying to stem it with your thumb, and then it's gushing, you can't stop it anymore. It was a bit feeling like that. So I went, on the suggestion of the same friend, changed my GP, because she would give me, you know, Xanax anytime I went in there. And because I was still getting bad anxiety attacks, and I changed the GP to somebody who doesn't give out anything, which is brilliant, unless you're, you know, you're on your hands and knees. And so I've been with her ever since, and I suppose we've navigated all kinds of different journeys, because you know, you get bad days in recovery as well. And you know, I'm on medication now for OCD, and I find it great. You know, I'm on for the last 3 years, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that has given you a really stable kind of normalcy to your life, I suppose. You know, where you had that fear initially with the Valium, you've kind of
Yeah.
found a good place, have you, that's kind of regulated things for you?
Yeah, exactly. I've done an awful lot of, you know, I do yoga. I mean, I won't say that I ever really fully relax either, but still, I'm able to, I mean, I got to the point where, this is going to sound intensely crazy, but it is. I'm just to give you an idea, where I couldn't go to the hairdresser without taking a Xanax, because I thought I was going to die when I went to the hairdressers, because of the color, the poisons in the color entering my bloodstream and propelling me into an anaphylactic shock. No scientific reason. My doctor persuaded me. She said, if you feel you need, she said, take a Xanax on the morning that you go. Now this would be like twice a year.
Yeah.
She'd give me one to take on the morning, but at the same time getting me to eat properly, um, exercise, sleep, all of those things, and minding my mental health in that way, and going to counselling. So I've done all those things. I've done an awful lot of work on myself, I suppose, and that's what's. But it's recovery isn't a linear thing, is it? It's, you have troughs, and it's like life. But the bad days don't ever last as long as when I was drinking and an active addiction.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm hearing there when you're talking, and I'm just thinking as you're chatting away there, is that you've had such a tough time in your life and so many challenges, but you continued, you pushed on and pushed on, and importantly, and for kind of the people on the call and the people that listen to the recording, is that you reached out. You
Yeah.
used a GP,
Yeah.
counselor, a psychiatrist. You were into the hospital. You did absolutely everything you could. You went to AA. You always kind of had that little hope in the background for yourself that you
Yeah.
could reach out and get help and create a different life for yourself. So there's a really powerful message in that for all of us, that anyone that's struggling, that if you do actually reach out, there's help there, and there's help there in multiples of different ways. It doesn't have to be what works for you works for somebody else. So there's multiple ways of reaching out and getting help when you need it.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. And everybody's journey is different. I know a lot of sober people who have never been inside the rooms of AA, and that's their journey. And I totally respect that. And AA is not for everybody. Like I said, when I went in and the first time saw God on the wall, because I am not a religious person. I believe in, the goodness of people and the universe. But I also respect other people's beliefs. And I don't think, that anybody should be, pressing our beliefs onto each other. So AA is not for everybody, and there are an awful lot of other forums to get sober on, and now especially with the Zoom and the Zoom meetings, since one of the good things from the P word has been this online connection, which is wonderful. It's
Yeah,
great to it's a wonderful.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And you mentioned something really important there as well, Vickie, just around, I suppose to get help, you have to help yourself. You mentioned your own self-care, little rituals, your yoga, and eat well, sleep well, look after yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. They're the three stools, eating well, sleeping well, and exercise. If you're missing one of those, you're on a very unstable base. You need the three legs of the stool to function at all.
Mm.
And I know that myself, I, like everybody probably at the start, and up to very recently, was eating way too much, and went back into eating the wrong things. When I say the wrong things, I mean the wrong things for me. And that don't suit me, and had to make changes. And luckily, my youngest daughter, is a real foodie. So if I suggest, oh, will we just get chips tonight? She go, no, we're gonna cook something.
Oh, do we have to? Yeah. It's nothing like a takeaway on a Friday for a treat.
Exactly. Once in a while, it's brilliant. But yeah,
Yeah.
I know at this point in my life, I know my limitations, and I think that's a very valuable thing, is to know your limitations. So I know my limitations very well now. Yeah.
Definitely. And tell us, I suppose, something we haven't touched on at all yet is your journey through music. And lots of people will probably know you from collaborations with Declan Sinnott, and I know you've been involved with Christy Moore and things over the years, and probably the biggest folk names in the country, actual Irish music legends. So maybe talk us through a little bit on that, Vickie, and we can give a mention to your social media channels and what you're doing yourself music-wise, any little tours or anything that are coming up for you.
Yeah, thanks, Una. I suppose how that happened was, I was sober a month, and my friend at the time asked me to come to a gig with her in a pub. Of course, me being me, said yes. Arrogance.
Yeah.
I'm okay, I can go to a pub. I'm sober. But I really believed that I would stay sober. So I went to the Moonduster in Crosshaven, and where Deck was playing with his band at the time, Small Town Talk. And because I'm always late for everything, I was late for the gig. and the only seats left were up the front. So sat up the front and got talking to him in the break, and we've been in a relationship pretty much ever since. And that's how we met. There's a 20-year age gap, which works for us anyway, you know. We're very he asked me to do backing vocals on a Christy Moore CD, and he said, look, there's no promises. I really love this, but unless Christy likes it, it's not going to happen. And very luckily, Christy really liked it. So I'm on 5 of his albums, I think, and we also toured together as well. I played Glastonbury and the Waterfront Hall in Belfast, and all of these wonderful places. The Marquee in Cork, of course.
Absolutely. Don't forget to mention your home city.
Yeah, that was amazing. So I mean, I've been incredibly lucky, you know, that that happened when I was sober, you know, and that's again higher power. We mention a higher power a lot in AA, and it's a higher power of your own choosing. And I get down on my knees every day and thank my higher power, and every evening for just keeping me sober. But like that, I met Dec a month after getting sober, you know, and that I was asked to do music in the first 2 years of my sobriety. I turned a lot of things down. I was asked to be the singer in a Led Zeppelin tribute band, which I would have loved because I'm a huge rocker. But I had to say no because it was bringing me back into the very pubs and places that I would, you know, that I was in my last stages of drinking in.
Old habits and old people in the same places, and
things. Yeah, absolutely. So with Christy, everybody knows he's not secretive about his sobriety. It's a very safe environment to be in. There's no drinking. You're minded to within an inch of your life, you know, and it's just wonderful. So it was really great to be asked to do that, and to be so privileged to share that stage with some of the most incredible musicians in the country, you know.
Absolutely. And I bet you never had a buzz in your time drinking that you had, like being on a stage in Glastonbury. That's one for the books.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's absolutely true. The buzz you have in addiction is a very limited one. It only gets up maybe, you know, 30-40%. It's when, I don't know, sobriety lets you feel things. I mean, sometimes that's negative, but you feel things completely, whether it's good or bad. So when it's bad, okay, it's not so nice, but at least you have tools to help you cope and you realize what it is. But when it's good, it's the best high ever. You know, and just that buzz of the crowd. I've played a lot of, for your Scottish listeners, I've played Barrowland as well, which is just one of the best venues ever. Christy doesn't do standing gigs. Barrowland is a standing gig, and the roar of the crowd greets you as you get on stage, and you start running, and you keep running until the end of the gig, and it's unreal. It's unreal.
Those loud Scots.
I know. It's a great. I have to say, it's a great venue. I've seen a number of acts there.
Oh, is that Debbie?
Yes, I have.
It's
I actually saw Joe Jackson many moons ago there, but yeah, it's a really good venue.
Wow, that's brilliant. Myself and Dec just released a single, Joe Jackson, the Joe Jackson cover. Is she really good?
Yeah, he was good.
Yeah, brilliant.
So you have some fans, Vickie, in situ for the next time you visit Scotland. Some new fans.
Yeah.
So on that note, I think you were going to give us just a little taster of whatever you want. It's up to yourself, whatever you want to sing. Just a couple of little quick bars. I know we've taken up more of your time than we had planned to.
Very up to get back to work. This is called Little Rooms. It's my first solo single, and I wrote it a couple of years ago and recorded it with Dec. A few months back, released it last February. I'm a terrible guitar player. Please excuse it. Here we go. Little Rooms. Guitar's out of tune. We're just going to go with it. The little rooms we live in, they hold us up like words to come and peck our hearts out. They'll dry there in the air. No more song of Eden. No one left to care. A place beyond the stars where they stretch out in the sky, and darkness heals the noises with the music of the night, 'cause shadows speak the loudest. It's still so hard to hear a bubbling of babble playing in my ear. And oh, my friends, come dancing, and we'll find this sacred space. Our lives are set to dancing. Let this be our saving grace. The little rooms we live in, they hold us up like words, display us on an altar, and leave us for the birds. Oh, excuse my guitar playing, guys.
That was beautiful, Vickie. That was absolutely beautiful. Thank you for that.
No problem. If you want to hear a proper version, Dec does a lovely version with me.
Oh, that was a real privilege to get you all to ourselves. We didn't have to share you with the whole of Glastonbury. That was a one-off. So thank you for that. Thank you so much. And thank you for a really, really lovely, honest, open, vulnerable conversation. You really opened your heart and shared with us. So thank you for that.
So much for having me, Una, and thanks, John. Thanks to everybody. Thanks a million.
Not at all. We might just see if anybody has any questions before we wrap up, if they want to bounce something quickly.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would just like to say thank you for being so honest and open. I think it's really brave of you. I really do. You've had quite a ride. Yeah, so it's great to see, despite all the lows, you are where you are today. So congratulations to you. Well done.
Thanks so much, Debbie.
Yeah, and there's a lot in what you've said that I can resonate with. So yeah, thank you for sharing today.
Thanks for having me.
I echo what Debbie just said there, Vickie. It was absolutely brilliant. Thanks very much for your time and sharing some of your story. It was great, and your song was amazing as well. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. What's your first name? Sorry, I didn't see your name come up here. Stuart. Scott
Stuart, yeah, but you can call me. Everybody in the company calls me Stuart anyway, so it's okay. You can call me Stuart.
Blame his mother for giving him 2 first names.
Yeah.
It's a Scottish thing, sure it is, Scott.
Absolutely, Debbie.
Brilliant.
And let us know if you ever come into the Barrowlands, because I would love to see you. The song was lovely.
Oh, thanks a million. Myself and Dec are touring, or at least we're getting together tours, and we've toured Scotland together before, and we'll definitely do it again. We love Scotland.
You should do Celtic. Yeah, Celtic Connections is really good. It sort of happens to January, February time. Yeah.
Okay, nice one. Let's have a look at that, because we're our own agents and stuff at the moment. Well, I am anyway. I'm trying to get gigs first, yeah, Celtic Connections. Nice one. Thank you. Love it.
Right, folks, come here. Thanks
Yep.
a million to Una for hosting. Thanks
Yeah,
to everybody for joining in, and a huge thank you to Vickie for her braveness in sharing her story. Again, it's something she doesn't have to do, but I don't think there's anybody can not listen to this and take something huge out of it. And again, for those who don't know, we climbed Carron during the summer, and we were actually going to, Vickie was going to actually do a song at the top of Carron, but I'm adamant that we will do it next year in the sunshine, not the rain.
Yeah.
So you can join Vickie, Una, myself at the top of Carron during the summer when we do that. Everybody's welcome over from Scotland, and we may repeat it on Ben Nevis.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
Okay.
sure. We'll do backing vocals, Vickie. We're in.
I'll
Oh,
hold the
no.
camera and record. But no, on a serious note, heartfelt appreciation for everybody, and a huge heartfelt appreciation for Vickie and Una for a fabulous hour.
Thanks for
and an education enlightening hour. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Una. I love
Thank you, Vickie. It was lovely to meet you again. I hope we'll
Okay.
meet again soon. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, definitely. I can't
Take
cross
care.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. All the best.
Bye.
Bye.